Hi Janesville, welcome to Park Place Views, brought to you by the City of Janesville and JATVMedia Services. I'm Jamie Balsiger, the Management Information Intern in the City Manager's Office. This monthly program aims to keep Janesville residents informed by highlighting the people, places, events, and partners in the City of Janesville. On last month's episode, we talked with City Manager Mark Freitag about the 2017 year in review and the city's plans for 2018. If you are interested in viewing past episodes of Park Place Views, they are available to watch on the city's website or JATV's YouTube channel. Today, the City Manager, Mark Freitag, is joining us again, along with Finance Director Max Gagin, to learn about the city's 2018 budget. Mark served as Janesville City Manager since December of 2013. Prior to this position, he had a 25-year career in the United States Army and served as a colonel at the end of his career. Mark was the garrison commander of Fort Hood, Texas from 2010 to 2012 and finished his Army career as a deputy commander of the U.S. Army in Alaska. Then Max first began working for the City of Janesville in 2009 as a management intern in the City Manager's Office. He then spent 2.5 years working as a budget and management analyst for Broward County, Florida. In 2013, Max rejoined the city team in Janesville as a management analyst and moved to the city assistant to the city manager in September of 2014. Recently, in December of 2017, Max was promoted to the finance director. Welcome back, Mark and Max, and thank you for being here today.
Great to be here.
Great
Thanks
to be
for having
here.
us.
Thank you.
Mark, the city's 2018 budget was adopted by the City Council in November, but it's a really long process. Could you tell us more about the budget process?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, the budget process is something that really runs throughout the year, but we really dedicate a whole lot of time over a 4-month period. And it starts in August of each year, and it ends in November. And so in August, what we start with is we sit down with the City Council and we hold a budget workshop. And the intent there is to essentially to lay out to them, here's what our current financial projections are for the upcoming budget cycle. And then to particularly look at what parameters or what guidelines do they want us to operate within. And so we get their feedback, and then that drives our budget process. Once we're done with that, we bring all of the folks that work the budget process across the departments in the city. We bring them together, we do a budget orientation meeting, and then once that's done, we essentially hold department and division level meetings and staff work and exercises, if you will, during the month of August. In September, the departments and divisions come to me and make that budget presentation to me, and I either accept or not accept their budget recommendation for their particular department or division, and we make tweaks as required. And then we hold, as a city team, we then hold a reconciliation meeting, and that kind of helps balance things out. If we need to make some adjustments that you couldn't make individually with departments or divisions as they presented, you come back in and look at the city as a whole, and maybe there are places to make adjustments. And so we do that reconciliation meeting, and then in the month of October, the finance office takes that finalized budget presentation, packages it up into our budget book. We provide that to the council about the middle of the month, and then the second 2 weeks of the month of October, the council holds up to 3 budget study sessions where the city manager presents to them. The very first meeting is the budget itself, and so we essentially lay out, hey, here's where we're at across all of our funds, and present the budget. But then the council has an opportunity over those next 2 sessions to add, delete, to ask questions, to make refinements, and then the end state for those budget study sessions is they have what's called their council approved budget at that point. And so then once they've got what they think is right, for a budget, it then goes to the public, and the public has an opportunity to come into public hearings in the 2 meetings in November and provide feedback, and speak in favor or against particular items in the budget. And then at that second meeting, at the end of that second meeting, the council will approve the budget, and the council will then set the tax rate for the new year. And so it's a 4-month process, but really there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes throughout the year to make sure we're prepped, but that's our 4-month intensive cycle.
So when you started that process back in August, what were some of the challenges that the city faced as we began developing the budget?
Yeah, well, this year, frankly, was one of those years where it's not like it was the last couple of years. Traditionally, the city walks into the budget cycle, and we know that we have a significant shortfall to overcome. And since I've been here over the last 4 years, that's been anywhere from about $400,000 to $1 million. And that's a lot of money to make up in your budget. This year, frankly, we came in with about a projected $10,000 surplus, meaning that, we weren't going to have to make any significant changes. And so that's how we started the budget cycle. It was a good place to be. However, we did talk to the council. There were some areas that we thought that they may want to consider making some adjustments or refinements to. And one of those was, what percent of our budget do we want to provide as an increase to the Hedberg Public Library, for example. Traditionally, we do a 10% increase each year. Should we go to 5? Should we go to 7? Should we go to 8? Or do we keep it at that 10? And I think we came in the end just under 10. So good news story there. We also wanted the council to talk about animal control, or at least to provide some guidance to us, because that's one of those services that we provide that we're not required to provide by state statutes. However, we do, and so if we're looking for areas to trim or economize or to improve our fiscal situation, animal control would be one of those areas that we could do that. And then really another area which gets a lot of attention, and that is how are we going to essentially run our recreation programs. And so recreation programs, those are nice things that the city provides, but they don't necessarily apply to all user groups across the city. And so from a cost recovery standpoint, we want to make sure that we're not charging too much that the items don't get used, but again, not putting so much burden on the taxpayer to pay for something that he or she doesn't use. For example, our cost recovery for our senior center, for example, is only at 35%. So the taxpayers are covering, the other 65% there of that cost to run a senior center. Our aquatics program, our cost recovery is projected to be 31%. Our adult programming is at 84%. Our youth programming is at 55%. The one that really, frankly, is doing quite well is our ice arena and all the programs that we offer at the ice arena. Their cost recovery is at about 93%. So the taxpayer is only paying 7% of that cost to operate the ice arena, which, from a city perspective is a good news story.
There is some good news in there. Good thing there wasn't many challenges this year.
Yep.
Max, we seem to hear each year that the city enters the budget process at a disadvantage. Why is that?
Sure. The city's budget challenges are generally attributed to the fact that the cost to provide municipal programs and services at the current levels that our residents expect continue to increase, as well as outpace the city's ability to generate revenue due to restriction from the state of Wisconsin. So the city's general fund budget, it's made up of 2 primary revenue sources, one being property taxes, the second being state shared revenue. The state of Wisconsin has restrictions on how much you can levy in property taxes equal to your community's growth and construction value, and that's property taxes for operating expenditures. Additionally, state shared revenue has been decreasing for quite some time, and specifically in 2011, we had a significant cut. So our 2 main revenue sources in the city, they're decreasing year after year, but the state of Wisconsin doesn't give us the ability to make up any revenue shortfalls as well. So there's a lot of unauthorized funding sources in the state available to municipalities, one being we don't have the ability to have a local option sales tax. And then additionally, another challenge on the expenditure side is that we have the expenditure restraint program, which limits the amount of operating expenditure growth from one year to the next.
Can you talk more about our revenue challenges, Mark? How do levy limits negatively impact the city and the Janesville community at large?
Yeah, so as Max was pointing out, one of the things that the state currently does, it restricts you know, how much a municipality can increase its operating levy from year to year. And right now, you know, the minimum is 0, certainly, but the maximum is set at that value of net new construction. And that's what Max was talking about as far as, you know, when we build new things or add new, you know, construction value to our city, you know, there's a formula that will calculate out whatever that net new construction value is, and we can only raise it that much. The problem with that is that, you know, inflation historically consumes that value of net new construction. So, you know, inflation might be 2% and net new construction might be 1.2%. Well, guess what? You're 0.8% in the hole then at the end of the year. And so it's just a broken system as far as recognizing that cities like Janesville are working very, very hard to bring, you know, new companies to our city and to our state, to increase the number of jobs that we can offer to our communities, bringing people in. And so it's just one of those challenges that, you know, we need to get fixed. I would tell you that we have proposed to the state of Wisconsin. I've certainly talked to the governor and our state legislators, and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities endorses this move, and that is we need to change that maximum rate of that you're allowed to raise the operating levy, and that is inflation plus net new construction, so that you recognize and reward communities for all the hard work that they're doing to bring jobs to the state and to the local communities.
We hear a lot about Janesville not getting its fair share of state shared revenue. Max, can you talk more about that issue?
Yes, so the city of Janesville receives the 3rd lowest state shared revenue per capita among our 15 peer communities in the state of Wisconsin. So on average, Janesville receives $81 per resident in state shared revenue, but the average of our 15 peer communities is $179. So it's a $98 per capita or per person difference. So we estimate that if the city of Janesville received the same amount of shared revenue on average per resident, we would have an additional $6.2 million that could be spent on items like our street infrastructure. And it's not just we have a revenue shortfall, but there's also an impact to the programs and services we provide because of the revenue shortfall. So when we look in comparison to those same 15 communities in the state, we see that the city of Janesville has the 2nd lowest police staff per capita, 3rd lowest fire and EMS staff per capita, 2nd largest coverage area for our fire and EMS stations, the 2nd highest base transit fare, and the 2nd lowest street maintenance spending per mile.
Mark, do state officials that we've raised this issue with understand our concerns? Has anything been done?
Yeah, well, I would say that yes, they get it. The question is are they willing to do anything about it? And that's been our challenge over the last couple of years. The good news is this year, you know, we had some positive momentum, and I'll talk about that here. Over the last 3 to 4 years, we've actively lobbied our state representatives and senators, so Senator Ringhand, Senator Noss, Representative Kolstey, and Representative Loudenbeck. And like I said before, I met with the governor in March of 2017 to kind of make our case regarding shared revenue, regarding levy limits, regarding the local sales tax option, and kind of what the effect that is with us. But the good news is that here in 2017, in preparation for 2018, Representative Loudenbeck, who's a member of the Joint Committee on Finance, she was able to insert a motion recognizing that we're essentially getting the short end of the stick when it comes to shared revenue. She was able to insert a motion into the budget, which provided an additional $583,000 expenditure restraint program payment to the city to kind of offset some of those shortcomings. And so we were very appreciative to her for making that motion. The great news is that, you know, it made its way through, you know, the Assembly's approval process, the Senate's approval process. It went to the governor, and the governor even included it in his budget. And so the good news is for the city, although we're not talking millions of dollars, as you know, Max has talked about concerning shared revenue, $583,000 can have an impact for the city of Janesville, and we will, or it will, in 2018.
And what will Janesville do with the additional state funding that it will receive next year?
Yeah, so like I said, you know, we went to the council back in I guess it was, we found out about this in late September when the governor approved it. And so when we presented this to the council, you know, we said, we've been making an argument for the past 3 years that we're, you know, short per capita on police, fire, coverage per, you know, fire station, et cetera, you know, high transit fares and so on and so on. And so we've been making that case, and we figured, you know what, it's probably best to put our money where our mouth is. And so, you know, we wanted to make sure that $583,000 went to those, you know, specific impacts that we've been lobbying, or using as a lobbying tool over the past 3 to 4 years. And so the good news is that we presented it to the council and they have approved it. And so what that means for the community is that in 2018 we're going to be able to hire an additional 2 police officers and provide about $60,000 in additional funding to the police department to cover for overtime costs. And, you know, in their line of work, you know, it's great to have police officers that do the daily missions and the daily requirements. However, you know, you just don't know what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis, and so that overtime money is extremely important. And so made sense for 2 police officers and $60,000 additional dollars in overtime funding. In the fire department, we were able to hire an additional 3 firefighters, and then to Max's point with, you know, having the high transit fare as compared to the rest of our peer communities, we were able to reduce that general base fare by 25 cents from $1.75 to $1.50, and then make adjustments to all the other associated fares also. So great news story there, because that then impacts, you know, those who don't have cars and they rely on the transit system to get them to and from work, to and from grocery shopping, you know, to and from school, you name it. And so that was huge. The other thing that we were able to do is we were able to essentially double our road crack sealing program. And so, you know, we'll talk about roads here in a little bit, but, you know, one of the ways to sustain or to, you know, lengthen the service life of a road is just to keep up with the cracks as they develop so that water doesn't intrude in, and then in the wintertime it freezes and it breaks the concrete or the asphalt apart, et cetera. And so if we can stay proactive in doing a good job of crack sealing the roads when they need to be sealed, you know, that's huge for the community as far as keeping our roads in service longer. And so we were able to double that crack sealing program from 5 miles to 10 miles in 2018. And then the last thing that we had a little bit of money left over out of that $583,000, and there were 2 things that our city employees identified as projects or things that they thought the city should look at as an organization. One of them was our personnel policies. Currently there are about 240 pages worth of personnel policies that govern all things that associate with an employee. And so is there a way to trim that down? Is there a way to make it, you know, a little bit more user-friendly or less cumbersome? And then the other topic was the idea of the IT system, our information technology system, our software, our hardware, our staffing, how we're organized, how everything's interconnected. And so we were able to put a little bit of money towards each one of those ideas or those issues, and, you know, do some reviews of those. And so we're going to do that in 2018.
I understand that municipalities in Wisconsin are not able to levy local sales taxes. I'm sure some people hear that term and think another tax is a negative. So what's the argument for changing the law to allow for a local option sales tax? Max?
Sure. So sales tax is just a different way of taxation that is a little bit fairer. It's a tax on consumption, so meaning that the taxes are paid by those who have the ability to spend the money, whether it's an individual or business. So sales tax really allows a municipality to broaden its revenue stream and its ability to collect revenue from a large number of individuals on a wide range of activities. So for example, sales taxes are paid by both residents and non-residents alike. And in Wisconsin's current funding structure for municipalities, there's not really an opportunity for non-residents to contribute towards the city's programs and services. So they use the programs and services, but they often don't pay revenue to support it. So by having a sales tax and being on consumption, those visitors who visit the community and buy goods and services would be helping pay for the services that they utilize. And especially with Janesville being a regional economic and shopping hub for southern Wisconsin, we see our fair share of non-residents coming through the community. So we see this as another opportunity to be able to spread the cost of municipal programs and services to people who utilize them. And lastly, we estimate that if the city of Janesville had a local sales tax in 2017, that was equal to about 0.5%, that we would have generated approximately $8.3 million.
So we've talked a lot about the revenue side of things, but let's turn to the discussion to how that money gets spent. This year, how much money is collected by property taxes getting distributed amongst the taxing jurisdictions?
So first, property taxes are paid for programs and services that are offered by many taxing jurisdictions within the city of Janesville. So many people might not know, but there are multiple public entities that do receive property taxes in Janesville. The first being the city of Janesville for municipal programs and services, the Janesville School District for educational services, Rock County for post-secondary educational expenditures, Blackhawk Tech for post-secondary educational expenditures, and Rock County for countywide services. The amount of property taxes that are paid by a homeowner to each of those jurisdictions varies based on the assessed value of your property, as well as what is the adopted property tax levy for each of those governing bodies. So in Janesville, 36% of your property taxes go to the city of Janesville, 31% to the Janesville School District, 28% to Rock County, and 5% to Blackhawk Tech.
So the city gets 36 cents of each dollar collected in property taxes. Mark, how does that get allocated to city services such as public safety, economic development, recreation, and other areas?
Yeah, well, as Max explained, the breakdown to the different taxing jurisdictions, we can take that a step further. For every dollar that comes to the city of Janesville in property taxes, we know that 28 cents of every dollar goes towards the police department, to their activities, operating, etc. 21 cents of every dollar goes to the fire department, 19 cents goes to public works, and then it gets a little bit smaller. So 10 cents goes to general government, and general government are pretty much all those functions that reside inside of City Hall. Another 10 cents goes to the library, 6 cents goes to Parks and Recreation, and then 2 cents to community development, which includes economic development, 2 cents towards transit, to our bus system, and then 2 cents goes towards other things.
I hear a lot about the general fund versus enterprise funds and don't really understand the difference. Max, can you give a quick explanation of what that means and what revenues go to different funds?
Sure. So the general fund is a municipal government's main or chief operating fund. So generally it has the receipt of your property tax dollars as well as any other general revenues such as state shared revenue. And then it pays for citywide services such as general government, public safety, public works, parks and recreation, things that don't often recover their costs through user fees. And then enterprise funds are a little bit different in that they're used to account for business type activities in which a fee is charged to a user for those goods or services. So for example, we have enterprise established for our water utility, wastewater utility, and stormwater utility in that as people consume water or expel water into the wastewater system, that they pay a fee for that service. And for those items, those revenues have to match the expenditures.
Were there any significant changes in the 2018 budget, Mark?
Well, interestingly, no. Other than that $583,000 that we've talked about, the rest of the budget, stayed relatively the same, and so it was a much easier budget process for us this year than it has been in previous years, where we're trying to cover significant shortfalls. And so, the significant change was that additional $583,000. Not a lot of major adjustments to any services or programs across the city.
As part of the budget process, the city starts to plan what capital projects will be completed in the following year. How do you define what's a capital project, and how are these projects funded? Max?
Sure. A capital project is a project that helps maintain or improve a city asset. So when we think of a capital project, we often think infrastructure. And that project has to have a useful life of typically more than 5 years, but often it's usually 10 or so. So some examples of what is a capital project would be either the construction, expansion, or renovation of a city facility. Additionally, we do rehabilitation of city infrastructure such as streets, water mains, as well as wastewater service lines. And lastly, when we do purchases of larger capital equipment with a useful life of 5 years or more. So capital projects are funded by a variety of revenue sources, the main one being property taxes, but we also do receive quite a bit of state and federal grants, especially for our street rehabilitation program, as well as user fees. So there are various mechanisms that we pay for capital projects, but the means in order to finance them overall is the city funds our capital projects through the issuance of debt. So we issue debt utilizing a 10-year promissory note, and then we utilize property taxes or grants or user fees to pay back the debt service on those notes.
Then Mark, what are some of the big capital projects planned for 2018?
Yeah, well, it's certainly going to be an exciting year, and I'll hit really on 3 topics, and that is one, some infrastructure improvements associated with our downtown and the town square. 2 would be our road program, and then 3 would be our Janesville transit system and some new buses. But let's talk first about the town square. So, pending council approval, and in this form of government, that's the next thing that has to happen here. I can work it all I want to, but until they say commit the funds, we can't commit the funds. But pending council approval, the city plans to spend about $6.5 million on downtown infrastructure improvements. $2.9 million of that will be local dollars, and about $3.6 million of that will be federal aids or state aids and grants. And so a little over half coming from other sources of funding rather than local revenues. And some of those programs in 2018, the first one is going to be Court Street two-way conversion, and so the council's already approved converting Court Street, which runs through the middle of our downtown, from a one-way street to a two-way street. Not a major project as far as cost, but still one that needs to get done in support of our Arise plan and the future of the town square. So that's project number 1. Project number 2 is in conjunction with SSM Health. We've got a great partnership going with them to build a fitness court, which will provide an outdoor workout facility for members of the public. It's free, it's open, it's available year-round, and so from the idea of having a healthy community, it's another option for people to remain and to stay healthy without having to go to the local gym and pay those fees. The next big thing that we're going to be doing in 2018 is we're going to complete the west side of the town square. And so, step number 1 is really something that's funded by Forward Janesville. They're sponsoring an interactive water feature, which will be kind of like a splash pad on steroids. And oh, by the way, we'll also kind of had a nice design element to it, like a statue or some kind of monument, memorial feature. And so it will be a showpiece on our west side. But that's going to happen, but that's been money that's been raised by Forward Janesville through donations. But that project will get started, and while we're doing that, we're going to essentially build some parking right behind the IBEW building, so kind of on the central portion of the west side there. And then we're going to connect the Ice Age Trail, which will come from the Milwaukee Street Bridge down to Dodge Street, and then run through that west side of the town square and continue south. So that's a big step forward for us on that piece. And then the continuation of that is the development of River Street between Court Street in the south and Milwaukee Street in the north. River Street will be converted into a festival street, which will provide us an opportunity to shut the street down, to do a farmer's market, to do our concerts, to do art festivals, jazz festivals, you name it. We've got a dedicated place to do that. It's not a raised curb and street level, it's all one level, which will be kind of nice. But more importantly, there'll be electricity and outlets available, so if you needed to plug something in, you could plug something in. And so that's a big piece. And then the other thing that's going to actually start next year late, so we'll call late fall, will be the deconstruction and the rebuilding of the Milwaukee Street Bridge. That bridge is over 100 years old, well beyond its useful life. Although it has been inspected and it is safe, it's time to get ahead of a potential issue down the road. And so we are going to start in the fall of 2018 to totally demolish the bridge, take it down to the abutments and the base piers, and then rebuild that in 2019. So that'll start about this time next year. And then the other thing that's kind of fun about the downtown is we're putting up a wayfinding system of signs so that, when people come from the interstate and they get to the downtown, how do they get to the Lincoln Tallman House? How do they get to the ice arena? How do they get to, the library? How do they get to City Hall? All those places that you'd want people to get to in our downtown. And so a lot of projects. It's a big year for construction projects in 2018. Turning to our road program, so in 2014, we worked on our strategic plan, and one of the messages that we heard from the community was the citizens wanted the roads in Janesville fixed. They wanted us to put money towards our roads, and so we took a good hard look at that, and we realized we have 330 miles of road in the city of Janesville, within the city limits, that we're responsible for. And if you figure that the average lifespan for a road is 25 years, you know that you've got to repair or to update or to improve 12 miles of road per year for 25 years to cover that 330 miles. And so in 2015, we worked with the council, got them to buy into an enhanced road program for the city. And so what that meant is in 2014, we repaired or resurfaced 6 miles of road. In 2015, we increased that to 2.5. In 2016, we made that big jump to 12 miles per year. And honestly, in 2017, we did 14 miles of road because we had 2 major state-provided or state-funded road programs. One was Austin Road, and then the other one was East Milwaukee between Sumac and Wright Road. In 2018, we're projected to go back to 12 miles of road per year, but that road program is a response to the community saying this is important to us. The city certainly listened to them, and more importantly, the council listened to them, and we're moving forward. And I just saw some data charts the other day that showed that we are making progress in the essentially ratings or grades that we have for each of our roads on average, but we've got a big hill to climb because it was something that was neglected for some period of time, and we're trying to play catch up right now. And then the other thing that's a great news story is our buses. In 2018, we'll purchase 5 new buses. We have a total of 17 buses, and all of those, by the end of this year, all of those 17 buses will be over the federal use limit, if you will, either by age or by miles on each bus. I think the miles, Max, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're at 500,000 per bus. And so once you go beyond that, the feds say that bus should not be run anymore. Or if it's over 12 years of lifespan, again, you shouldn't be running that bus anymore. And so at the end of 2017, every single one of our 17 buses will be beyond that expected lifespan or mileage use. So the fact that we've got funding for 5 of those, and the good news story on that is that 80% of that funding comes from federal and state grants, and 20% of that funding is paid for by local tax dollars. And so it's a good move forward for the city.
Lots of things happening in 2018. Something that's important to Janesville citizens is the value of the services that they receive from the city in exchange for what they pay. Max, how do we measure the cost of the city's programs and services relative to other cities in Wisconsin?
Sure. First, the city of Janesville prides itself on providing quality programs and services to our residents at a great value. As such, city staff, we break down and constantly monitor the cost of providing the city's programs and services, and then benchmark it against what our 15 comparable communities in Wisconsin do. So if you look at the data in 2015, Janesville's per capita spending on items such as general government, street maintenance, and law enforcement services all ranked within the bottom 3 of those 15 communities. And then when you combine those services and look at them as a whole, the city of Janesville spent the lowest amount on these basic services. And lastly, when we look at total spending per capita, On all government operations, Janesville has the 6th lowest of our peer communities. So again, it's something that we do constantly monitor, and something we pride ourselves as being able to provide quality programs and services at a great value.
Mark, if members of the public want to dig deeper into the budget than we were able to today, where can they find information?
Yeah, well, first of all, the city always wants to make sure that we're transparent, that we're accessible, that we're responsive, and more importantly, that we're accountable. And so the way that we, see ourselves doing that in relation to the budget is making sure that that budget document is posted and available to our website, for the community to look at. We obviously have hard copies available if someone wants to come in and look at a hard copy. But one of the things I would tell you is that you can go on our website, so www.ci.janesville.wi.us/2018 budget will take you there. But the other thing that I would offer, and this is really something that Max championed in the last really 2 years, and that is making budget information available over the last 10 years and accessible, but also for somebody to be able to work through it and to compare year to year in that. And we have 2 systems that are available. One is called Open Budget, the other is called Open Expenditures. They're available on our website for access. And so Open Budget allows you to compare budgets from 2008 forward, and Open Expenditures allows you to look at expenditures. What are we spending money on from year to year to year? Previously, there have been questions about how much money we spend on consultants, and we're able to show that, consistently on average, we're spending about 1 to 1.25% per year on consultants across all the things that the city does. But if that tool wasn't there, the public wouldn't have that knowledge unless they came and talked to Max or to me or someone else on city staff. So those are 2 great programs that are available for community members, or for that matter, if you've got access to the internet, you can be halfway around the world and take a look at Janesville's budget. And then the other thing that I think is a great improvement to being transparent, open, accessible, etc., is this program called Park Place Performs. And the budget is our fiscal document, but the thing that really governs how the city is moving forward on a 5-year plan is a strategic plan. Where are we going over the next 5 years? What are we going to do to get us there? So again, Max worked this past 2 years on a program called Park Place Performs, which allows the citizenry, residents, or anyone with internet access to take a look at how the city is keeping up with its strategic goals and measuring itself. And a component, remember, our fiscal situation and our fiscal health is part of that strategic plan, so it's important for people to be able to dive in and take a good hard look at that too. So lots of ways for people to get information about money spending and budgeting in the city. More importantly, it's certainly available and open on the website.
So we're just about out of time. Do any of you have any closing thoughts for our viewers at home?
Yeah, I do a couple. I don't know about you, Max, but I would say absolutely. And I think it's important for both our residents and our businesses to remember that, they've got a piece of this discussion too. And as we've said, we've been working very, very hard over the past 3 to 4 years to lobby our state legislators and the governor to, let's fix state shared revenue, let's fix the levy limit restriction, let's give municipalities an option for a local sales tax option. And I would tell you that, fair is fair, but unfair, which is what we're experiencing, is just flat wrong. And so what we need, the residents and the business owners and the community, is to help us lobby our legislators so that we can affect some change for the future, our own future, but more importantly, for the children, that are going to have to live in this community, in the future, and are going to have to deal with less public infrastructure, less public resources, less programs, less services, because Janesville's getting the short end of the stick when it comes to shared revenue, and we're operating under a broken system with the levy limits as they're currently applied. And so I would tell people that I encourage them to get involved, to lobby, to talk to their legislators so we can get some change affected. And I would encourage folks to visit on our city website. We've just recently updated and gotten approved by the council our state and federal legislative agenda. And so if you go to our website, So ci.janesville.wi.us/legislative. That will take you to the legislative agenda, and you can find out our top 4 or 5 legislative issues both at the federal level and the state level.
If you have more information for Mark or Max, feel free to contact them at the information that is listed on your screen, and you can always find it on our website. Thank you, Mark and Max, very much for your time today and allowing our viewers to get information about the city's 2018 budget and other finance issues. And thank you, viewers at home, for tuning in. Don't miss next month's episode of Park Place Views, where we will be talking about the new Business Improvement District in downtown Janesville. In addition to tuning into this program on a monthly basis, stay connected to the City of Janesville by following us on Facebook or Twitter. You can also sign up to receive emails with our press releases and other important information. And you can subscribe to get emergency alerts from the Janesville Police Department on Nixle. For Park Place Views and the City of Janesville, I'm Jamie Balsiger. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next month.